While those thugs were tearing into my heart and liver, my dear husband was out whining and dining with his first love for their 10-year anniversary of meeting. I sent him a desperate voice note via WhatsApp, but all I got back was, "Don't think this will grab my attention. I won't go home tonight, you stupid clown." Honestly, I breathed a sigh of relief when he didn't come rushing. Knowing him, I'd probably have ended up worse off. 3 days later, there he was, the top forensic analyst in town, examining evidence from a high-profile murder that had everyone talking. He went on and on about the victim's last moments, how she fought for her life and all. Little did he know, he was dissecting the death of his very own wife, the one he couldn't stand. Yours truly. There I was, tossed in a pile of garbage like yesterday's news. An old man walking his dog stumbled upon the scene. His pet chewed a black bag like a toy. The old man figured it was some discarded meat until out popped a human leg bone. Cue the shock and horror. Soon they were uncovering more bodies all over town. It was like a nightmare come to life. The cops were all over it, setting up a special task force to crack the case. Who got called in? None other than my husband, Stephen Craig, the town's forensic prodigy. He was on site, analyzing blood spatters. Even he was taken aback by the horror show. "This is some next-level brutality," he whispered, face going pale. The criminal investigation team leader, Xander Young, wanted him to break it down. Steve pointed out every detail like a seasoned detective. "See these stains? Looks like someone did some organ harvest. And those marks on the wall? Poor victim was awake the whole time." Xander scratched his head. "So, according to the forensic guys, our victim's a young woman under 30. Who could she have ticked off to end up like this?" But Steve had a hunch. This isn't some random brutal hit. Someone's got a grudge and they're just getting started. He was spot on. My husband's instincts were sharper than a scalpel. I'd love to see his face when he finally pieced it all together. So they found a ring at the scene, the key piece of physical evidence. Stephen picked it up all nonchalant, but Xander suddenly went quiet and whispered, "Stephen, isn't this ring a dead ringer for yours?" Stephen checked inside the ring. Smooth, no engraving. He didn't sweat it and just brushed it off. Probably just the same style. These rings were everywhere back then, you know. Once he was done, he lingered by the scene entrance, lost in his thoughts. After a bit, he glanced down and dialed my phone. It rang a few seconds before he hung up. No second thoughts. Look at her, acting all high and mighty after throwing fits every day. She isn't picking up. Not her, though. He was so sure of himself because our wedding ring had engravings on it. But seriously, husband, being the forensic whiz that you are, shouldn't you know metal engravings are the first to go? It only took me 6 months to buff out our initials. The forensic team worked through the night, 5 or 6 people patching me up. My body just lay there on the table. I felt queasy at the sight of all those body parts. Xander pointed to my body. "Look, the head's gone, fingers too, and there's a chunk missing from the ankle." Stephen stayed silent, probably thinking about what made those parts different. Finally, he spoke up. "So, who's the unlucky one?" Xander shook his head. "We gotta wait for the DNA results. As soon as someone files a missing person report, we'll jump on it and try to ID our mystery guest." My husband nodded, barely giving my body more than a quick glance. But to be real, this whole mess was thanks to him. Later at the meeting, Stephen threw out his theory. "I've been reviewing recent cases. There's a pattern. Similar stuff's gone down in your haven. They gut people, bleed them out, and dismember them. Someone's making a statement for street reputation." Xander's eyebrows shot up. "Your haven? So you're saying this is just like what those drug gangs pulled?" Stephen nodded. "Pretty much." Xander acted fast. "All right, let's hit up Your Haven PD. Maybe they could lend a hand." After the meeting, a junior cop shadowed Stephen, singing his praises. "Mr. Craig, you're a legend. You figured out our next move in a flash." I was dying to join in, wondering how Stephen would react when he finally cracked the case. But Stephen just gave a nonchalant nod. He'd had so many admirers growing up, he got sick of praise long ago. "Hey, Mr. Craig, hold up." The young cop stopped him, plucking a long curly hair from Stephen's jacket. The cop smirked. "Your missus doing all right?" Stephen's tone was ice cold. "None of your business." He snatched the hair, shoved it in his pocket, and strode off. Left behind, the cop awkwardly rubbed his nose. I wished I could give him a pat on the back, but my hand just passed through him. I wanted to tell him that if he found my head, he'd see my hair was short and straight. That one on Stephen's shoulder belonged to Kelly. That night I got murdered. Kelly was snuggled up to my husband, leaving behind that little souvenir. I hadn't been home for 3 days, and my husband hadn't even tried to find me. The last time we fought about Kelly, I crashed at my best friend's place. He assumed I was mad again and didn't want to deal with it. Then Kelly called him, voice trembling. "Stephen, there's supposed to be a thunderstorm tonight and I'm so scared. Can you come stay with me?" I saw Stephen's grip on his phone tighten and loosen. He said, "I'm married, Kelly. It's not really convenient for me to come to your hotel." Just when I thought he showed some common sense, he added, "But you can come to my house. She's not home." Even Kelly was surprised. "Stephen, are you sure? What if she suddenly comes back? We wouldn't be able to explain ourselves." I snorted. She knew exactly what she was doing, playing innocent. Stephen asked, "What do we need to explain to her? This is my home and you're my friend. Don't worry about what she thinks." He sounded so sure of himself. "Besides, she's not coming back." Kelly went quiet, then asked, "How do you know?" Realizing her tone might have been off, she quickly added, "I mean, did Sabrina get mad at you again?" Stephen nodded. "Yeah, on our 10th anniversary, I told her I was going to see you. It's so frustrating. Even though we're just friends, she's always suspicious. I married her, but that's never enough for her. Unlike you, Kelly, you've put up with so much over the years and never complained. I should be apologizing to you." I almost laughed out loud. No sane person celebrates their 10th anniversary with their ex after getting married. And the day they celebrated was the day I died. "Stephen, are you planning to celebrate your anniversary next year or mark my death?" Kelly rushed over, and as soon as she saw Stephen, she practically leaped into his arms. "Stephen, it's so dark and creepy outside, I'm freaking out." I rolled my eyes. It's dark every night. I'd never seen her this scared before. Stephen gave her a reassuring hug, patting her back gently. "Don't worry, I've got you." He showed her the emergency candles he'd bought, clearly meant to calm her down. "With these, even if the power goes out in a storm, we'll still have light," he explained. Kelly sighed, leaning against his shoulder. "Stephen, you're my hero." It was getting late and Kelly needed to freshen up. She went into my bathroom, shut the door, and raided my skincare stash without a second thought. When she finished, everything was a mess. Caps left off. She chuckled. "Sabrina won't mind. She's not coming back anyway." In the mirror, I watched Kelly silently, transparent as a ghost. Thunder Thunder rumbled outside, and when lightning struck, a figure materialized on the floor. Kelly screamed and called out for my husband. Stephen burst in like a hero, scooping Kelly up and shielding her. She trembled against him, muttering, "Isn't this kind of risky? What if your wife shows up?" Stephen shrugged. "I don't know." He glanced up, lightning casting a cold glare on his face. "Even if she did, she's got no right to say anything. If it weren't for her, you wouldn't leave, and we wouldn't have missed out on all these years together. You don't gotta worry about her. If she kicks the bucket out there, it's no skin off my nose." "All right, husband, your wish is my command. I hope you're truly as indifferent as you claim to be." At the late-night police station, the task force was still grinding away on my case. Xander called for a break, and Stephen went to grab a sandwich. One colleague teased him, "Hey, Mr. Craig, how's a married guy with a fan club of ladies ending up in line for food with us single dudes? What about your wife? Didn't she come to deliver your midnight snack tonight?" Stephen's face darkened, and his sandwich hit the table. "Why bring her up? It's gross." Xander sensed tension. "Yeah, it's been a while since we saw your wife around. She used to show up with snacks whenever you pulled an all-nighter." Stephen shot him a look. "All those snacks end up in your belly, don't they? Still hungry?" Xander's expression turned serious. "Seriously, though, is your wife okay? Is she missing?" Stephen snorted. "Missing? If she had any backbone, I'd respect her. She's like a pesky little dog, always underfoot. It's been quiet for 2 days now, so can we stop talking about her?" From the sidelines, I smirked. He wouldn't have to put up with my nagging anymore. Must be a relief. "Mr. Young, we've ID'd the body." A cop barged in, waving the DNA results. His face twisted. Xander reached for the results, but the cop hesitated. "I think Mr. Craig should take a look first." Stephen looked up, puzzled. "Why me? Why show it to me?" Xander glanced at the results, and his expression turned serious. "Your wife. Have you been in touch with her lately?" "Yeah, she even sent me a voice message a few days back." "A few days? Has it been more than 3 days?" Stephen's eyes widened as realization dawned. He shot up from his seat. "What are you saying?"
Xander didn't answer immediately. He just turned the report around slowly, like he was afraid the words might rearrange themselves if he moved too fast. Stephen's eyes dropped to the page anyway. A long silence followed. Then, No, that's not possible." His voice came out thinner than he intended. Xander's jaw tightened. "We ran it twice. It's a full match." The room seemed to shrink around Stephen. The buzzing fluorescent lights, the stale coffee smell, the scattered case files, it all blurred at the edges as his eyes locked onto one line. Identity confirmed. Sabrina Craig. His wife. The one he hadn't bothered to look for. The one he'd called a pesky little dog. The sandwich he dropped earlier suddenly felt heavy in his stomach for no reason at all. Stephen let out a short laugh, almost automatic. That's not funny. You're saying my wife is, what, dead? In that mess?" No one laughed back. Xander's voice softened, but only slightly. "We need you to confirm something else." Stephen didn't move. "Confirm what?" A junior officer stepped forward, hesitating, then placed a sealed evidence bag on the table. Inside it, a ring. Scratched. Dull. Familiar. Stephen stared at it for a long time. Then he reached for it. His fingers slowed the moment they touched the plastic. Inside the band, barely visible unless you knew exactly where to look, were faint, almost erased letters. S+S.
His throat went dry.
"That's impossible," he whispered again, but this time it didn't sound like denial. It sounded like collapse. Xander watched him closely. "You said your wife hasn't been home in days." Stephen nodded slowly. "We had an argument." His voice cracked slightly on the last word, like it wasn't important enough to justify what was happening. A chair scraped somewhere behind him, but he didn't turn. Xander continued, careful now. "Her phone was active briefly after the estimated time of death. Then it went dark." Stephen's grip tightened on the edge of the table. "She always does that," he muttered, almost defensively. "She disappears when she's mad. She's dramatic like that." But even as he said it, something in him was starting to unravel, because deep down he already knew. The junior officer spoke again, quieter than before. "Sir, there's something else." Stephen looked up sharply.
"What?"
A pause. Then, "We found traces of cleaning chemicals on some of the remains. And skincare products. Expensive ones." Stephen blinked. His mind flashed unwanted, uninvited. A bathroom door. Open bottles. A woman laughing softly to herself. "Sabrina won't mind. She's not coming back anyway." His breath hitched. Xander leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Craig, when was the last time you saw your wife alive?" Stephen opened his mouth. Closed it again. Nothing came out. For the first time since he stepped into that room, the forensic prodigy, the man who could read death like a textbook, had no explanation. And somewhere far beyond the station walls, where no one could hear her anymore, the truth finally settled in. He hadn't just ignored her calls. He hadn't just dismissed her voice notes. He had mistaken her disappearance for drama, when it was already too late to correct anything at all. The room didn't move, but Stephen did. A single step back, then another, like the floor had tilted, and he was trying to find level ground again. "That's wrong," he said quickly, too quickly. "You're misunderstanding something. Sabrina, she does this. She leaves. She shuts people out. She always comes back when she's done being emotional." No one corrected him.
No one needed to.
Xander's expression had shifted now, not shock anymore, but something heavier. Professional certainty. "We already checked her last known movements," he said. "We have timestamps, CCTV gaps, disposal route mapping." Stephen shook his head once, like he could physically dislodge the words.
No.
"No, you can't just," she wouldn't. His voice broke mid-sentence, because the image came uninvited again. A ring on a gloved hand. A bathroom in disarray. A voice note sent in panic, ignored. 3 days. Then silence. His breath started to shorten. Xander pushed a chair slightly closer, not gently, not cruelly either. Just practical. "Sit down, Mr. Craig." Stephen didn't sit. He stared at the table instead, like it might turn into something else if he looked long enough. "I talked to her," he said suddenly. She sent me a message. I heard her voice." The junior officer exchanged a look with Xander. Xander nodded once. "We recovered data from your phone." He slid another file across the table. "Audio recovery report." Stephen's hands hesitated before touching it. Then he played it. A faint crackle filled the silence. Then her voice. Not strong. Not angry. Just tired. "I won't go home tonight, you stupid clown." The same line. But now it didn't sound like drama. It sounded like a door closing. Stephen stopped the recording immediately. His hand froze over the phone like it burned him. "No," he whispered again, but it was weaker now. Fractured. She was just punishing me." Xander's voice lowered. "Mr. Craig, did your wife have any known threats against her?" Stephen swallowed. For the first time, he looked like he couldn't find the correct answer in his own memory. And that terrified him more than anything else. Because there was something. Not a threat. Not from outside. From him. A dozen small dismissals. 1,000 ignored moments. A pattern he had once called normal marriage conflict. The kind you don't write into reports. The kind you don't investigate. Until it becomes evidence. A phone vibrated on the table. Someone's. Not his. Xander glanced down, then answered sharply. A short exchange. A pause. Then his eyes lifted again, directly to Stephen. "We've confirmed the location where the remains were found," Xander said. "There's something else you should see." Stephen didn't respond. He couldn't. They let him anyway. The walk to the evidence room felt longer than it should have. Every step sounded wrong. Too loud, too final. When they stopped in front of a sealed door, Xander keyed it open and gestured inside. Cold air, sterile light, and a single body bag on a metal table. Stephen didn't move at first. Then he did. Slowly, like approaching something that might still wake up and speak. Xander stood behind him, not touching him, not forcing him. Just there. "Before you look," Xander said quietly, "there's something you should know." Stephen's voice came out barely audible. "What?" A pause. Then, "She wasn't dismembered randomly." Stephen's head lifted slightly. Xander continued. "She was moved. Carefully. Repositioned. And the scene, it wasn't just disposal." Stephen's throat tightened. "What are you saying?" he asked. Xander didn't soften it this time. "It looks like someone wanted her found." Silence. That sentence landed differently. Not as horror. As intention. Stephen stared at the bag for a long time. Then, very slowly, he stepped closer and placed his hand on the zipper. His fingers trembled. For the first time since the case began, the man who understood death better than most living people hesitated to meet it. And somewhere in the back of his mind, one thought finally surfaced, fully formed. What if she didn't disappear? What if she was trying to be seen? Stephen's hand hovered over the zipper. For a moment, he didn't open it. He just stood there, breathing too carefully, like even air might accuse him. Behind him, Xander spoke again, quieter now. There's something else. You should prepare yourself. Stephen gave a faint, almost automatic nod, though he clearly wasn't prepared for anything anymore. Then he pulled the zipper down. The sound was small, final. Inside was not what his mind had been bracing for, not fully. The body was covered, partially obscured, preserved for confirmation rather than display. But it wasn't the physical details that hit him first. It was the ring, placed deliberately on the folded fabric near where a hand would have been. Stephen's vision tunneled, because this time, it wasn't just familiar. It was intentionally placed, not dropped, not lost, left. His knees almost gave out. Xander watched him carefully. We think she was conscious for part of it, he said. Enough to control certain elements afterward. Stephen's mouth opened, but nothing came out.
Control.
That word didn't belong in this room. Not in death. Not in what he had been building in his mind to survive the last few minutes. His voice finally broke through. No, she wouldn't, she couldn't. But even as he said it, his thoughts betrayed him. The bathroom mess. The skincare bottles. The line she'd spoken with that strange calm. She's not coming back anyway. Xander stepped slightly closer to the table. There are indications she staged parts of the scene. Not to hide identity, but to delay it. Stephen turned sharply. That's insane, he snapped, louder than he intended. Why would she do that? Xander didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into the file and pulled out a printed map, several marked locations circled in red. Because she didn't want this discovered too early, he said. And because she left something behind.
Stephen stared at it.
The circles weren't random. They formed a path. A route across the city. His stomach tightened. What is that? He asked. Xander slid the paper closer. Places tied to you. Your shared history. Your arguments. Your anniversary locations. Stephen's breath hitched.
No,
that couldn't be. Xander pointed at the final circle. A quiet voice followed. This is the last one. Stephen leaned in despite himself. The address made his blood run cold. His own house. The ride back felt unreal. Stephen didn't speak once. The city blurred past the window like it didn't belong to him anymore. Every red light felt like a warning he was too slow to understand. Xander sat beside him, reviewing notes in silence, occasionally glancing over, but not offering comfort. There was none to offer. When they arrived, the house looked exactly the same. Too normal. Too untouched. That was the worst part. Stephen stepped out of the car slowly. The front door was closed, but not locked. His fingers trembled as he pushed it open. Inside, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Then he saw it. On the living room table. A single folder. Neatly placed. Waiting. Stephen didn't move at first. Xander came up behind him. That wasn't in the initial search sweep, he muttered. Stephen finally stepped forward. His hand shook as he opened the folder. Inside were photographs, printouts, messages, screenshots. Not random, not chaotic, organized. A record. His life, flattened into evidence. And on top of it all, a handwritten note. Stephen stared at it for a long time before reading it aloud. His voice was barely there. If you're reading this, you finally looked for me. The room seemed to tilt. And for the first time since the case began, Stephen Craig understood something that made no forensic sense at all. This wasn't just death. This was being seen too late. The silence in the house didn't last. It never does, when the truth is finally inside it. Stephen stood in the living room holding the folder, but it already felt too heavy for his hands. Like the paper had turned into something else, something that could press down a man from the inside out. Xander didn't touch him this time. He just looked around the room. At the normality. At the life that had been quietly ending long before anyone called it a death scene. Then his radio crackled. A voice came through, sharp and urgent. Sir, we found additional correspondence. It's bad. Xander didn't respond immediately. He just watched Stephen. Then, quietly. Bring it in. Stephen's head snapped up. What now? The junior officer hesitated before stepping inside with a sealed evidence envelope. It wasn't large. It didn't need to be. Inside were printed chat logs, voice note transcripts, bank activity, and photographs taken over time, not in one moment. Not chaos.
Pattern.
Stephen's own voice appeared in black and white. Dismissive. Cold. Rehearsed. Stop overreacting. You're exhausting. I'm busy. Handle it yourself. He read them once. Then again. Slower. Like repetition might change the meaning. It didn't. Xander finally spoke. We also recovered deleted messages from your device backup. Stephen's throat tightened. I didn't delete anything.
A pause.
Then Xander replied, carefully. Someone did. Or you did, without remembering. That landed wrong. Not as accusation. As possibility. Stephen stepped backward until his shoulder hit the wall. No, he said, but it was weaker now. I'm not, this is not. She was dramatic. She always. His voice stopped. Because even he couldn't finish the sentence anymore. The room felt smaller. Hotter. The walls too close. Then the junior officer spoke again, quietly, almost reluctant. There's something else in her note. Stephen's eyes lifted. Xander didn't stop him this time. He pulled out the final page. Not printed. Handwritten.
Neat.
Controlled. Stephen read it out loud, his voice shaking more with every line. You were never going to kill me quickly. That's what made it survivable until it wasn't. The air left his lungs. Xander's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. Not judgment. Recognition. Stephen backed away again. No, he whispered. No, I didn't, I'm not like that. But the problem was no one had said he was a monster. Not once. That was the part that finally broke him. Because everything they were showing him didn't require cruelty in one moment. Only repetition. Only neglect that stacked itself into something indistinguishable from harm. The phone on the table buzzed again. This time Xander picked it up.
Listened.
His face shifted slightly. Then he said, flatly, your department has suspended your access. Stephen blinked.
What?
Xander lowered the phone. You're no longer lead forensic consultant on this case. The words didn't compute at first. Then they did.
Slowly.
Like blood returning to a numb limb. You can't do that, Stephen said. I solved cases. This is my work. Xander nodded once. Not anymore. Stephen let out a short laugh, broken, disbelieving. So what now? You're arresting me? A pause. Then Xander answered honestly. Not yet. That was worse. Because it meant there was still time for everything else. Outside, the house no longer felt like his. It felt observed. Recorded.
Judged.
Stephen sat on the floor for a long time after they left him alone. Folders still open beside him, pages scattered like fragments of a life that no longer made sense in order. And in the quiet, something worse began to happen.
Memory.
Not the facts. The tone. Her voice. Not screaming. Not dramatic. Just tired, repeating itself across days he never noticed were becoming final. I won't go home tonight. And he had said nothing. Because he thought she would come back. Because she always had before. Because it was easier to believe in return than responsibility. His hands started to shake. Then not stop. By the time dawn approached, Stephen Craig, the man who once read death like evidence, could no longer separate evidence from himself. And for the first time, he understood what ruin actually felt like.